Welcome to the Doom Scroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Amanda Stevens, and my co-host,
Anna Belinsky,
two writers who are political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our news feeds from the last week. I'm Amanda Stevens, and this week we're tackling some of my old talking points, the long-awaited, at least for me, results of the Google antitrust lawsuit, and something I'm way less excited to talk about, Israel expanding its hit list by bombing Qatar, once again targeting agents who were there to negotiate a ceasefire deal. But before that, how have you been, Hanna? It's nice, or is it nice, to take a break from back-to-back doom scroll reporting?
I won't lie, it is nice. Although, to be honest, I think I've been living life on hard mode for so long that I can't tell a difference. Like juggling the job and the baby, it's just like everything, it just keeps coming at me. The only awkward thing was having to tap everybody to help me host because, you know, Doom Scroll does require a bit of prep time. And sometimes you have a week where so many things happen.
Like this week.
Or a week where not many things happen. And that's either way, it makes it hard to choose topics for an episode.
It's true. It's hard to control the news.
But we get by with a little help from our friends.
Thank God they were here. And so I'm just going to dive head in, though,
Let's
because
go.
my excitement over this made me feel like a boring person. But I've been looking forward.
We're kind of boring now. We're adults, you know. It comes with the territory.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just more boring. But I've been looking forward to the results on this antitrust lawsuit against Google for a while, at least because I was curious of what would happen. And I know that I've dropped in two previous Doom Scroll news reports that it was ongoing. But in this last week, about a week ago now, the results were announced, and they're a little bit confusing and personally disappointing, but I'm going to kind of let you decide where you fall on it. So the lawsuit was brought by the U.S. government, which alleged that Google was a monopoly and, as a result, crushed competition and offered consumers a subpar product. Their suit sought to see Google broken up, which includes Google's Chrome browser and Android operating systems, and that they would have to divulge their search data with competitors, among other things. Google was obviously arguing the opposite of all of these, that they didn't want any of that. But before I get into how this case resolved, I wanted to start out by asking you, Hanna, a question I often interrogate myself. How much of your life is on a Google platform? Or,
too much.
To put it another way, how much trouble would you be in if all of Google's services just crashed overnight?
So, first of all, we would be up a creek without a paddle for work.
Yeah, our entire work system is on a Google platform.
We communicate through the Google chats. We use the Google Drive. Unfortunately, we are very reliant on Google here at work. And it's funny you would ask me this because only recently have Aaron and I been trying to kind of reduce our personal reliance on Google.
Yeah.
And I'm finding firsthand just how difficult it is because I've been using the Chrome browser, I think since college.
Oh, definitely for me.
I'm pretty sure, and I'm very accustomed to it. And I still use it, like I said, for all the work I do here.
Yeah.
And I've had my Gmail accounts
forever.
For years now, too. I used to have an old Hotmail account, you know.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Nope.
And
I had a Comcast account.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yahoo.
Also not not anymore for me either.
And naturally, I'm typing search inquiries into Google, doing all my research for this program, basically using Google every day, multiple times a day. You know, switching browsers or emails is one thing, but finding a new search engine in particular, it feels impossible because it's like Google's all there is.
To that point, I was just going to say, if you think you're using a different search engine, just do a little quick check. Whenever you use a search, even on a private website, check if there's a small italicized note in the corner anywhere next to the browser that says powered by Google.
What?
Because that is also
escape.
something that happens. A lot of at least internal search engines and a lot of, I think, search adjacent things are powered by Google.
Ew.
So you and I are actually proving what I think is exactly what the judge in this case found. I think it's Judge Mehta, which is that Google is a monopoly. And the first time that I heard about this on the New York Times, it was described as the easy part of the trial, which is, I don't know if that's funny or sad. But this case had some
so
interesting
blatant.
points. Yeah. The most interesting point to me was that Google services are offered for free, so it couldn't be argued that they were price gouging. But we're going to get into actually the results more than the case itself, because the judge still found pretty quickly that the company was a monopoly. Now, the less clear part was deciding what to do about it. According to reporting at the New York Times, again, the judge did not actually break up Google, in fact, calling it an overreach. However, he did mandate that Google had to share some of its data with competitors, which is way below what the suit sought. It also allows Google to continue paying companies like Samsung to make it the default browser, which was something that they said was an anti-competitive tactic. However, it disallows Google from using exclusivity contracts. Finally, some competing companies, they were called, I think, like worthy competitors or something along those lines, are allowed to display Google search results, theoretically to allow them time to innovate. Now, a lot of this, what some see as a light-handed approach, was in fact because of the rise of chatbots. But before that thing, also, I want to check with you again, to what degree do you agree? To what degree do you agree? I should have read that out loud first. How much do you agree with what the judge did in this case?
Well, I feel about like you do. I'm a little disappointed that he was so soft on this, but I mean, I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I do think it's good that now these partners like Apple and Samsung can get out of the previously exclusive contracts Google forced them to sign, because frankly, I mean, that is like the definition of monopoly. It's insane that they can do that.
Anti-competitive practices.
Yeah, because there's such a household name. They're really the search engine, although it's not even that good of a search engine anymore. I probably complained about this the last time we talked about Google. Anytime you actually want the answer to something, you have to basically search Reddit, you know, because Google is just, it's slop now. So anyway, my complaint still stands.
But I think you're not the first person I've heard that. And that even includes outside of my own personal circle, like other media that I ingest, other podcasts, other people who like don't know me. I've heard coming up more and more often repeatedly that the sentiment that Google doesn't work, and people have been looking to other solutions because they feel that their Google is either too personalized, too ad focused, or something else. Like it's not giving them the kind of real answers that they at least feel like they used to get.
Let me radio safe this word: encrapification of
the
Google.
Encrapification of Google, right? Yes. If you know, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, so that, and I think that is in large part. I'm not sure how they proved it, because like this, I don't have all the details on this case. And it wasn't something that was gone into great detail in either the BBC or New York Times reporting. But I think that this is in part of how it was proved to be an inferior product, right? Because of its monopoly. And so like I think that this is something that was taken into account. But now, to get into why the judge was so light-handed on this. So something important to know, which also shocked me, frankly, is that this case was brought against Google in 2020.
Yeah, it's been 5 years.
It's been 5 years. But since then, generative AI and AI chatbots have become a very lucrative thing that did not exist when the suit was brought, right?
Yeah.
So this was directly acknowledged by Judge Mehta, who seems to believe that at their current pace of development, chatbots and AI can pose a significant threat to Google in a way that traditional search engines couldn't. And this is taking into account that Google is also playing with AI. Lily Jamali at the BBC says that the judge felt he was asked, quote, to predict the future of a rapidly changing market rather than merely look at historical facts, end quote, such as the state v. Microsoft, which was a heavily referenced case in this trial. It's one of the last big tech versus the government antitrust trials. So this also takes into account something that they were looking at is the fact that more and more people are using AI chatbots as search engines today, which wasn't a thing that had happened. So how much competition do you think AI chatbots, another obsession of mine, actually represent to Google? And do you think that they could actually represent a market challenge or affect Google's user base?
Have you tried Have you tried ChatGPT yet?
I
Just
have
out of
not.
curiosity. Okay, so
I need to because I complain so much about it.
that's the thing. I realized I was complaining a lot about it, and I thought to myself,
Let me try
this
it.
past couple months, I was like, I should see what it's all about, what
Yeah.
exactly I'm complaining about. So I have dabbled in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Mostly I ask it questions about baby-related things, like
course.
how can I adjust his sleep schedule? When can I introduce what foods? How
Mm-hmm.
should I do it? Blah, blah, blah. And although I am anti-AI on principle,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan, I have to admit it has been really useful in this regard. It's good for things that rely on identifying patterns, like, for example, an infant's sleep cycle,
Baby care.
and for consolidating large amounts of information that might otherwise be distributed through a crappy Google search, like
Right.
that pulls up a bunch of gangly articles about the same topic, and they're covered in ads and images. And when you're just sitting there and you want an answer, you don't want to scroll through that junk.
All the ads.
Yeah, then you just want the info as straightforward as possible. And you know what? ChatGPT does a good job of that. And I
Well-
think they are coming for Google's money.
I was
And
gonna
Google
say-
should be afraid.
That is something also that when Joey and I had another huge discussion on the topic, he brought up as well. Our coworker, Joey Chow, mentioned that he uses Google. He uses ChatGPT and other AI like search engine like functions, because he has several different ones that he practices with or dabbles with, specifically to help him sift through large amounts of information.
Yeah.
Like you were saying. So like to kind of I guess summarize
Yes.
the information from an article.
It is really
or
good for that.
Tips from an article, right? So the way that I described this, like, I don't know if I agree with it, because to be honest, I did want to see Google broken up, because I think they are still a monopoly.
Oh, yeah.
But the way that I came to view this was that Judge Mehta, to use a silly metaphor, which you've had a preview of because you see the script, didn't want to kneecap the leading horse in the final round of the race, but instead wanted to give all the other horses who were gaining on him a boost.
You know what?
And
sorry.
I think that's the way that he was thinking of it instead.
I can see, if I'm the judge, I can see why he would make a more conservative ruling this time.
Yeah.
Just to give things a chance to develop and potentially allow for a stronger case to arise later when
Yeah.
the tech has maybe stabilized or bitten off more than it can chew, whichever comes first, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of see where he's coming from. You know, he is a judge after all. They're usually pretty smart.
Yes. So now this may not be the last of it, because one, this is something that I have a huge interest in, but also two, there is another antitrust case against Google in the works right now, also from the United States, over their ad dominance.
Ugh.
Just again, if you think that you don't see a lot of Google ads, anytime you go onto another separate website and there's an ad in the corner, see if there's a little box that says powered by Google, because most of the time it is. But we'll have to wait and see. That we don't know when that one's going to wrap up. So we're going to turn to more dour news after this short break. All right, so like I said at the top, now we're turning to something that is, by all accounts, much more dour, which is Israel bombing Qatar earlier this week. But before we get into that exact instance, I wanted to give some spark notes on what has been happening since the last time that we talked about it, mostly within the last month and even more than that within the last week with Israel's war on Palestine. So, first of all, starvation remains a looming threat for most of Gaza, with investigations into the Israel-backed GHF aid sites suggesting people are routinely injured by the IDF while traveling to or waiting for aid, according to the UN and others. A flotilla of aid ships, like the Madeleine earlier this year, was struck with a drone attack allegedly by Israel, causing a large fire while it was docked in Tunisia on Thursday, according to Al Jazeera and others. Also, earlier this week, Israel ordered an evacuation of Gaza City so that it could launch a full military takeover of the city, urging residents to move even further to the coast and then south in a move denounced by the UN and others, according to CNN. And finally, as I was writing the script, Israel has intensified its bombing in Yemen, killing at least 35 civilians in only yesterday at time of recording, in response to attacks led by the Houthis regime, according to a spokesperson from the IDF and Reuters. But today, the main reason that we're talking here about this topic is because on Tuesday, Israel launched a strike in Doha, Qatar, against Hamas leaders. Israeli leaders claimed they were hunting all those responsible for the October 7th attack, but Hamas leaders were only in Qatar to negotiate a ceasefire deal which had been proposed by the Trump administration, according to Fiona Nemoni at the BBC. This is not the first time that Israel has attacked or even killed ceasefire negotiators. Though I should say that in this case, the negotiating team did survive. I recently found out.
Yeah.
However, this also follows a violent attack by a gunman at a bus stop in Jerusalem, which killed 6 Israeli citizens, according to reporting at the BBC, that Hamas eventually did take credit for. Qatar responded with fury, and the United States gave a mixed response, saying they were made aware of the attack, but too late to alert Qatari authorities, or to stop it from happening, again according to the BBC. While Israel has claimed full responsibility, Qatar said it is holding the U.S. administration jointly responsible due to its ongoing support of Israel.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. But I want to ask you, specifically in regards to what happened in Qatar, what hope do you have that a ceasefire can still be brokered, and what do you think it would take to potentially even force both sides to the table?
Can I be real?
Yeah.
I have very little, like almost zero hope now that they are going to meet in good faith for any kind of ceasefire deal. I really think Israel, or I should say Netanyahu, is not going to stop until everyone in Palestine is dead or displaced.
Yeah.
I really think that. And that is a really dark thing to say, and I don't want it to be true, but that seems to be how the situation is shaping up. Yeah. I have actually an internet friend. Don't we all have internet friends?
Yes.
She's based in Israel. She obviously is not a Zionist. Otherwise, I don't think we would be friends.
Yeah.
But she says that the situation on the ground there in Israel feels increasingly untenable, and she just wants to leave. And in her opinion, the hostages are not much more than political pawns, and the government has no real intention of getting them back, just bombing until there's nothing left. So I assume everything Netanyahu is doing at this point is just to prolong the situation and avoid any sort of ceasefire so that he can finish what he has set out to do.
His own ideological bent, which seems to always have been clearing out Palestine, like eradicating all the people who live there.
Yeah, I think it really looks dire right now.
So I was researching this earlier, and in what should be a continuing segment, Worst Person You Know has a great point. The president of Turkey said, responding to the attacks on Iran, that the biggest obstacle to peace at this point would appear to be Benjamin Netanyahu himself.
Yeah. Yep.
And that made me disappointed to agree with that man, because I don't like him either. But actually, speaking of all of the other countries in the region, I did want to talk about the impact on the larger region. So now, including Qatar, Israel has bombed 6 countries in total. This includes Palestine, Iran, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and of course Qatar. It also includes 7 if we include the attack on the fleet in Tunisia.
Tunisia, yeah.
So 6 of those were in the last week, according to reporting at Al Jazeera. But I was listening to another podcast with these 2 international policy guys who used to work at the White House during the Obama administration. And they were discussing how this was in part sending a message to the greater Middle East that Israel wants to be able to do what it wants when it wants without repercussions. And if we look at Qatar as an example, the country has been hosting ceasefire talks since the start of the conflict in 2023 and was only hosting Hamas leaders at the behest of the United States because Qatar is a huge U.S. ally.
Yeah,
there's even a U.S. base there. All of this Israeli leaders and Netanyahu would have known. However, Qatar is also the first of the GCC countries to have been hit. And the GCC is basically a supergroup of 6 oil-rich countries in the region, which includes Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The alliance is both an economic one, and I've also seen it quoted as a military one. This really made me wonder and think, do you think that there will be any pushback from other countries in the region against Israel?
It's hard to
put yourself in that
place. It's really hard to put myself in those shoes. But just based on what has occurred and based on their response, I feel like everyone is like kind of throwing up their hands almost because Israel I'll say Netanyahu, he does whatever he wants, seemingly without consequence.
Yeah, seemingly with impunity.
Yeah, including build nuclear weapons without being part of the non-proliferation treaty. And I think
or at least have them. I don't even know if they built them, but they do have them.
Yeah, by having, I guess, yeah. And I think by attacking these neighbors, including the ones they normally don't touch, they're pushing the envelope at this point, I think. Similar to the way Russia was pushing the envelope by sending drones into Polish territory. I think it's not just a distraction. It's not just a way to occupy other world leaders, but it's also a way to see what he can get away with. And I think also he is content in the knowledge that America probably isn't going to do anything about it. And if America doesn't do anything about it,
who does he have to worry about?
Exactly. I'm also ill at ease because it seems like the news has gone a bit dark on the topic. Not that it's not being reported on, but rather that it feels like I'm not getting a
as much
complete
news
picture anymore. Yeah. It's just, what I see a lot lately is just really disturbing images of starving children.
Yeah.
So that's, I just think it doesn't seem like anybody is actually going to do anything to stop Netanyahu running basically amok in the region. And he has a vested interest in keeping this going because once it ends, he's cooked.
I think so too. To your point, this was something that I did kind of want to end on. Some news that I have been seeing that is like kind of positive is that there are more and more countries in the Mediterranean region, at least, that are taking steps to try to force Israel at least to go to a negotiating table. I've seen news about Turkey, Italy, and Spain all closing their shipping
I saw
to
a little
not
bit
allow
about sanctions.
Yes. It's a little bit disappointing because it feels like this should have happened way earlier.
It's like,
but
come on.
I am still glad that it is happening. And I did kind of want to end on like a little bit of a meditation with what you were saying. This is a serious topic, but we're going to get a little extra serious for a second. Just about a month ago, you may have seen news stories about Israel killing the last Al Jazeera news crew, at least at that time it was reported as the last Al Jazeera news crew, and a journalist, Anas al-Sharif. He became the face of the reporting on the Palestine war while he was there. And Israel justified the killing, calling al-Sharif and the other journalists, or accusing them of leading a Hamas cell, despite no proof, according to reporting from Al Jazeera and CNN. He was widely credited as one of the last journalists doing live reporting from Gaza. Right now, at the same time, the IDF started carrying out what is called a full occupation or full reoccupation of Gaza, which is what many have decried as ethnic cleansing, including us. However, much of the news that we see about the violence in the Middle East is about Netanyahu's actions outside of Palestine. And like you said, it feels like we're getting less and less of a complete picture on what's actually happening in those borders. And everybody who listens to us, I hope, can also intuit what we think, which is that this is not an accident. And I would like to take a rare moment to urge people to pay attention to what is happening to the best of your ability and use whatever resources you have available to you to demand a stop to that violence. Because we just don't know what's happening and we can't abide by that. I hope your conscience will push you to act.
Now's the time to doom scroll.
Now is the time to doom scroll for good. But that is kind of where we want to end it. I hope that pushes you to at least do some investigations. Now, there were only 2 news articles for the first one, but there were a lot for all of the stuff on Israel and Palestine. And those will, as always, be listed in our show notes. So if you want to see where I got my information, you'll be able to see it there. I also forgot to name drop the name of that other podcast that I was listening to previously was Pod Save the World. I find it helpful. We're not sponsored, but I don't know if I'll put that earlier in the show or I'll just leave it here.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all for today's news report. As I said before, you can find all of our referenced articles in the show notes for today's episode. I'm Amanda Stevens.
I'm Hanna Belinsky.
And thanks for joining us on air today. Tune in tomorrow for more programs by Radio Taiwan International. And in the meantime, remember to stop scrolling and touch grass. We'll see you next week.
Bye.